Okay, so, hi. I'm not, okay. Hi, I'm Ryson Sinek, and today, today we're looking at
Croixleur Sigma.
That. This is a third-person hack-and-slash game from a Japanese indie team called Souvenir Circle. A circle being kinda difficult to describe. I can't really find anything definitive saying one way or another, so it's really just what I hear, so if I'm wrong about this, I apologize. Calling it a company isn't quite accurate. It's more like a group that comes together to make something. In the case of Souvenir, that thing is games. They have made Croixleur, and the upgrade we're going to be talking about today, Croixleur Sigma, and a few games under the Toho umbrella. And we are just going to skirt right around the Toho series, because that's a quagmire of explosions that I just don't want to get into right now. Croixleur was brought stateside by New Media, a publishing group that brings indie games over from Japan. So, let's talk about Croixleur Sigma. Croixleur follows the story of these two girls, Lucrezia Visconti and Francisca Storaro, two sword sorceresses in training belonging to different academies in the fantasy world of It Is Never Said, in the Kingdom of Ilance. Well, Queendom of Ilance. Lucrezia is the top student of the Aristocrats Academy, Bessir, while Francisca is the top student of the Knights Academy, Celta. They have reached the test of the Tower of Neat. That's pretty much the important aspects of the plot. There are the two characters, the test that they need to complete for vaguely defined reasons, and the supporting cast of none. It's just these two the entire game. The only other thing is the monsters of the tower. These two must climb their way to the top of the tower and defeat the great monster at the end to complete the test. Very little of the backstory is explained. Like, we don't really know why the Tower of Need is such a big deal, or why the test is so important. But that doesn't really matter, because that's not really what the game is about. It's really just a framing device. The important thing is the interaction between these two characters, mostly watching them butting heads and kind of flirting, and playing a high-speed hack-and-slash. The two characters are fairly different in how they act, with Lucrezia being bubbly and not really worried about the problem in front of her, and Francisca being super serious. But as far as how they play, it's fairly similar. So, that high-speed hack-and-slash business. In Croixleur, you control Lucrezia and later Francisca, and slash, jump, dash, and spin, destroying all the enemies on the floor before moving on to the next floor. The goal is to get to the top of the tower as quickly as possible, and not die. You start with Lucrezia and one weapon, but as you clear floors, you unlock new weapons that you can equip at the start of the mission. You are expected to go from the start of the game with nothing but the weapons you assigned and get to the top of the tower in 15 minutes. While you are rewarded for finding the fastest path up, you are also rewarded for not taking that quick path. As you destroy enemies, you gain experience, which makes your character stronger in various ways, like increased health and magic. Magic lets you dash around and cast spells, which is really the primary way you will be dispatching enemies. All the weapons do the same damage with their basic attack, but each has a different spell. So you'll be using the 4 spells you get from the 4 weapons that you equipped at the beginning of the round. Now, a very important aspect is understanding the controls. The game expects you to use a gamepad. Either this one or this one works fine. All inputs are based on the player having a gamepad. That doesn't mean you can't play with a keyboard, but you're going to have to do some key rebinding. The attack button can be used 3 times to do a 3-hit combo. Jump is fairly self-explanatory. It gets you in the air to attack air monsters. The dash moves you very quickly in the direction you're going, and resets your combos and special abilities. And then there's Bomb, which makes the character temporarily invincible and attack enemies all around her. The slightly more complex controls are the special attacks. Those of you who have seen the Beastboxing review might remember the uppercut command. You hold up and punch to uppercut. Specials in Croixleur are similar and done by holding the special button, which is defaulted as the left bumper, and pressing a face button. Holding special and using attack uses weapon A spell, special and jump uses B, dash is C weapon, and bomb is D weapon. If that sounds hard to get a hold of, it makes a lot more sense when you're playing because how the buttons are arranged. You have attack, jump, dash, and bomb. Going in a circle like that makes a lot more sense as you're playing, and the weapons are visible in the bottom right corner of the screen, so it lets you see which weapon corresponds to which button. The controls are pretty responsive and don't fight against you for the most part. Well, except, Hey, stop that! The camera does that. It either slowly pans, either by using triggers or the right stick, or suddenly snaps to enemies if the right bumper is pressed. It would be far worse if it didn't have that snap to enemy button, but it can move so abruptly that it makes controlling movement disorienting for that brief moment. And in a game about speed, that brief moment is important. The game has multiple modes. A main story for both characters, climb to the top of the tower in 15 minutes. A bonus story, play as one character with an AI partner in a much harder 15-minute tower climb. A mission mode where you complete various challenges. A survival mode, which is how long can you go without dying. And a score attack, which is get the highest score in 3 minutes. There's also an arcade mode, which is really just story sans plot. While the mission mode is just okay, the other modes add some playtime, and make it so that this is a game that you can just load up if you're in the mood for some quick hack and slash fun. There's also a local co-op option for score attack and survival, but I haven't tried it. So let's talk about how this game looks. All in all, the anime styling works well for the game, with lots of bright colors and decently rendered models and character portraits. The enemies look cartoony without feeling too ridiculous, though the primary goblin enemy is trying to smack you around with a twig. Threatening. As for the character weapons, they look cool, and look like they have a decent amount of thought put into them. I like the way the weapons look, even if you can't really see them while you're playing, because, you know, enemies. So now it's time for the good, the bad, the strange, and the bland. For the good, we have the speed. This is a speedrun game where you gotta go as fast as you can and get the lowest time possible. Everything is built around that. How efficient are your weapon choices? How well can you manage your time when the enemy is attacking you? Can you deal with this boss quickly enough? The bad is the tutorial. What's the best way to teach a person how to play the speedrun game? Oh, I know! The character is going to just sit here and talk to you for a few minutes. The strange is the... Hey, no. There you go. The strange is the camera. You can either snap to an enemy, and I have no idea how it decides which enemy to snap to, or you can slowly control it manually, which wastes time. And finally, the bland is the enemy progression. There are 3 standard enemies: the ground goblin, the flying eye bat, and the wizard. There are 2 mini-bosses, this big old guy who I think is just a giant goblin, and a Delahan. And there is 1 boss, the dragon, and 1 rival fight for each character, which is the other character. And these enemies get harder by being a slightly different color and being more aggressive. I understand that this one's kind of a personal preference, but maybe stronger enemies having slightly different looking weapons or something like that would have been a little better. The different color is fine, it just feels a little strange when the later area enemies are still just smacking you around with sticks. I do recommend this game. It's a good time for a few hours, and it's a game you can come back to and improve your time and score. But if you are not a fan of hack and slash games, this is not a game that will convince you otherwise. It's a good example of the game type for people who enjoy it, but for most other people, they would probably just get bored really quickly. Croixleur Sigma is available on Desura, Steam, Gamersgate, and New Media's website for $7.99. Till next time, I'm Ryson Sinek, and I am gonna go goblin hunting.